Dr. Bourke, you spent much of your career studying, analyzing, and sometimes even being involved with the arrest and prosecution of sex offenders. What drew you into that line of work?
I just had an interest in trying to make a difference and using psychology to help protect kids and to bring justice for those who had been the victims of some sort of crime. It just really resonated with me. I thought it's a noble use of psychology, and it's child protection has always been just always been of interest to me. They're our most vulnerable population, and combining law enforcement and psychology in this, it allowed for a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunities to make a difference.
Well, we're thrilled to have you as a part of Scouting America, and in particular the Youth Protection Committee, which is a relatively recent thing. Can you tell us about that? You're the chair of that committee.
Yeah, the Youth Protection Committee is comprised of subject matter experts as well as survivors of sexual abuse in and outside of Scouting, and we have come together to support the efforts in Scouting America to help protect the youth that are in Scouting today, as well as to acknowledge the abuses that have occurred in the past.
Very interestingly, I think, you mentioned some of the members of the committee are survivors. Maybe talk about their contributions and what has it been like working with them?
So I think it's a fantastic model to use both subject matter experts and survivors together. That collaboration allows very interesting discussions. It allows some rigor, and it's just proven to be very helpful for us when we're talking about policies to get as many perspectives as we can. Even in our subject matter experts, we have multiple disciplines, multiple professional backgrounds. We have law enforcement, we have those who have worked with children, we have those who have worked with trauma, we have just all of these different perspectives coming together, and it really makes rich conversations and making sure that we are taking everything into consideration to make those youth protection policies as strong as possible.
As the chair of that committee, can you share a little bit about your role? I guess you kind of guide the discussion. Do you have any goals or anything specific like that you hope to get accomplished?
So as a Youth Protection Committee, we had some goals that were set out for us and some tasks that we needed to accomplish even before we convened. So we had some marching orders when we first got together, and that started a lot of very interesting conversations. Since then, just because of the innovation that occurs in the creative thinking process, we've constantly discussed and thought about ways to enhance youth protection. We've been informed by other youth-serving organizations, and we just sort of take best practices and what the research indicates are the strongest policies to put into place, and we discuss those, and then we make suggestions to Scouting America.
In a perfect world, maybe we wouldn't need a Youth Protection Committee, but unfortunately, there are people out there who can be dangerous. Again, you've got a lot of experience with this, more than we can get into now, but I wonder if you could share over your decades of experience and knowledge and studies, anything that you've learned that you can share with Scouting America's parents, adult volunteers, that is relevant to them and their role, and as they enroll kids in Scouting, as they sort of guide kids through the Scouting journey. Anything you can share with them from your experience that you've learned?
So one of the things I would tell the parents is that, as a parent myself, I would want to place my children with an organization that has done everything possible to keep those individuals at bay. Vigilance is important. Education is important. Having a sense of collective responsibility for the youth. That's really what it's about. We're forming a protective net, and that's what protects kids. I have always felt that my participation in Scouting in the past couple of years in particular is really about making that net as powerful as possible. The other thing I've noticed that's really important when people ask me, what's the best way to protect my child, is communication. And it sounds simple, but developing communication with your child, no matter how young, that enables your son or your daughter to come to you and just explain that something happened, that, that this didn't feel right, or something happened that was weird. And those are the conversations that parents should pay attention to. And we in Scouting really feel that, those conversations are really the start of youth protection. It's really about the relationship with the youth and educating them, but also letting them know that you're not going to get mad at them. If something happens and they just feel awkward or they just didn't feel right about it, that your child can come to you and have that conversation, and you're not going to judge and you're not going to be mad. And that allows kids to really unburden themselves. And it could stop or prevent grooming or some of these other processes that take place, and we can just nip it right in the bud.
It's interesting you mentioned communication. The topic, child abuse, it's scary, it's terrifying, certainly to parents. And I think so much so that maybe you can kind of understand why maybe even just a few decades ago, it kind of just wasn't something people wanted to talk about, right? Thankfully, we've evolved, I think, a little bit, and it's become a little bit more something that you're allowed to talk about. Organizations are, in fact, encouraged to talk about it, which I think is a good thing, right? But I wonder if you could share your observation on, in your decades of experience, how you've seen it evolve, and where do we need to go moving forward when it comes to communication and talking about this issue?
So even as recently as a few decades ago, child exploitation and abuse was sort of a taboo topic, and it wasn't discussed in polite society. But we've really benefited from that growth that you're talking about, and people educating themselves and people learning more about abuse and exploitation, because to keep this in silence is not beneficial for our youth. It doesn't allow us to really get a handle on the problem and to think about proactive strategies on how to keep our kids safe. I think one of the things that's also really changed the landscape in this area is the internet. Whereas before this was something that occurred sort of in the shadows, it wasn't discussed because it really it wasn't so overt. Now the internet is something unavoidable. Everyone has the devices. Every child has access to online content, and it's really forced discussions about online safety in particular. But because that's where many abusive incidents start, it's also a great place for us to begin that education and that prevention process.
So maybe as we move forward, when it comes to communicating with our children, it does seem like a lot of it starts with the internet, internet safety, things like that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the internet is a doorway, and sometimes it can be a great doorway. It's a place where our kids can learn, fascinating information, and adults. I mean, it's the first place we turn to when we want to learn about something. Unfortunately, it's also a door that monsters walk through. It's a door in which people reach out to our children when we otherwise may not have allowed that person to even have anything to do with our kids. So that's the portal that we want to guard. That's the place that we want to be vigilant toward. Is that initial door.
A lot of folks watching might recognize you from the Scouting America Youth Protection Training. I've taken that training quite a few times myself. One of the things that I found most interesting about that whole thing is the idea that many experts consider child maltreatment to be a public health crisis because it's sort of the start of so many other problems. Can you talk about that a little bit and your philosophy on that?
I agree with that philosophy, and the research is quite strong. Abuse of any kind, physical abuse, psychological, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect are collectively what we refer to as adverse childhood experiences. And there's others, viewing domestic violence and others, but those experiences have been linked to many issues and problems later in life. They are even things that people may not realize, such as obesity and cardiac problems, and things that on first glance people wouldn't realize are connected to those initial experiences. But the after effects can be significant and can last for a very long time. So this is why I think most of the experts in the field, while it's important to react appropriately and to care for survivors, we also can never forget that the earlier we can intervene, the earlier we can either prevent or thwart efforts to harm or exploit our kids, the more likely we are to be able to prevent those problems way down the road as well, right? So the earlier we're getting to it right now, then we're not going to have those issues down the road.
Dr. Bourke, what message would you like to send to parents of children who are thinking about enrolling their kids in a Scouting America program? Are their kids safe in Scouting America?
So I think any parent considering putting their child in Scouting, it may very well be the best decision that they can make. This is a phenomenal organization. My son is a recent Eagle, and I enjoyed every moment that I spent with him and my wife with him as he went through this journey, from Cub Scouts to Webelos to Boy Scouts. That quality time cannot. It's getting harder and harder to find that, I think, in our society, and I think Scouting is safe. I wouldn't put my child in this organization if I didn't have complete confidence. This is a great place for children to learn about leadership, for children to learn about all of the different skills that are learned both pragmatically in camping and tying knots, but more importantly, those life skills that we need that we need to be giving our kids. And this is it. In my personal opinion, it's the best place the best opportunity for us to give our kids.
Great. Well, this has been great, Dr. Bourke. Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me.